Welcome back to Spoilert Recaps. Today, I'll be discussing a 2011 film that blends biography, comedy, and drama, titled The Untouchables. Be warned, spoilers are ahead. Proceed with caution. One late night in Paris, Driss is behind the wheel, driving his boss Philippe through the bustling city. As the wait in traffic becomes tedious, Driss decides to speed, weaving through cars and ignoring traffic signals. This reckless behavior attracts police attention, leading Driss to wager €100 on his ability to shake them off. However, after passing under a bridge, the police corner him from both sides. Unfazed, Driss ups the bets to €200, claiming he can secure an escort. The officers order him out of the vehicle, prompting Driss to feign indignation, insisting that Philippe is immobile and he's rushing him to the hospital. The police find a wheelchair in the back and witness Philippe having a seizure, an act, leading them to treat it as an emergency. They decide to escort Driss and Philippe to the hospital instead of penalizing him for speeding. To celebrate his win, Driss plays September by Earth, Wind and Fire, and enjoys a smoke with Philippe once the officers leave. He assures Philippe he'll manage things as they slip away just before hospital staff can catch them. How it all began. This friendship began months prior when Philippe, a wealthy quadriplegic, and his assistant Magali were conducting interviews for a new caregiver. The candidates were uninspiring until Driss barged into the interview room out of turn, casually demanding a signature to prove he'd applied so he could claim unemployment benefits. His brash attitude and cheeky comments, including flirtations with Magali, amused Philippe. Instead of rejecting him outright, Philippe asked Driss to return the next day for his signed papers. Driss returned home to a bustling and modest apartment filled with his siblings. His older sister, Mina, stood out as the responsible one, helping him wrangle the younger kids while he tried to bathe. From the window, Driss noticed his younger brother Adama stepping out of a suspicious car. When questioned, Adama claimed he'd been at school, but his shifty behavior raised red flags. That evening, Driss's mother returned home. Driss tried to win her over with a stolen Fabergé egg, but she was unimpressed. Hurt by his 6-month absence and empty promises, she told him to leave, saying she couldn't deal with his lies anymore. With no place to stay, Driss spent the night with friends in the neighborhood. The next day, Driss returned to Philippe's luxurious mansion to collect his signed papers. Instead, Philippe offered him a 1-month trial as his caregiver. Intrigued by the opportunity to live in comfort, including having his own private bathroom, Driss accepted, though Philippe bet he wouldn't last 2 weeks. Adjusting to the role was no easy task. Driss had to learn how to assist Philippe with everything, from daily hygiene to mobility. At first, Driss is taught how to take care of Philippe. He must learn how to keep his legs stimulated, how to put him in the wheelchair, how to help him shower and change his clothes, some more intimate duties, like putting on compression stockings or cleaning Philippe after bathroom visits. However, he gradually embraced his responsibilities, realizing the job required not just effort, but also patience and empathy. Later in the evening, while he's enjoying a snack on the roof, he's interrupted by Philippe's daughter Elisa and her boyfriend Bastien, who are looking for a private place to make out. He kicks them both out after refusing to share his beer. Driss quickly gets used to the daily routine with Philippe, even if at first he does make some mistakes he learns from, like handing the phone to Philippe instead of putting it on his ear or forgetting the baby monitor while having a bath. He organizes Philippe's mail, but discovers some private letters that pique his curiosity. When he finds an ad for escorts among the mail, he decides to create a separate file for them instead of discarding it. Despite the demands of his new job, Driss still seeks enjoyment in life. He flirts unsuccessfully with Magali and occasionally invites escorts over. One morning, Yvonne scolds him for being late and discovers weapons in his bag, but chooses not to comment immediately. The bond between Driss and Philippe grew stronger as they spent more time together. Driss challenged Philippe's rigid routines, introducing spontaneity and fun into his life. Driss's task involves driving Philippe around. However, he refuses to treat him like cargo by putting him in a van. Instead, they take one of the luxury cars that rarely sees use. Initially hesitant about this choice, Philippe soon becomes excited about the prospect of a more thrilling ride, despite Yvonne's disapproval. When they attempt to exit their building, they encounter a neighbor parked illegally at their entrance. Without hesitation, Driss confronts him aggressively until he moves his car. a display that impresses Philippe but earns disapproval from Yvonne once again. Their outing leads them to a museum where Philippe intends to purchase an artwork that Driss dismisses as unworthy due to its simplicity, a mere red blotch on canvas. Afterward, Philippe meets with a concerned relative who warns him about Driss's violent tendencies and criminal record. However, Philippe appreciates Driss's lack of pity towards him and enjoys their banter. During another failed attempt at flirting with Magali over dinner in the kitchen while listening to Philippe dictate letters to her for Eleanor, a woman he's been corresponding with, Yvonne turns off the baby monitor, citing privacy concerns, and explains their relationship remains strictly pen pal based with a woman called Eleanor. Those are the letters he didn't let Driss open, but he's never met Eleanor in person. Their relationship is purely epistolary. Speaking of love, Driss teases Yvonne for the looks the gardener gives her all the time before going to bed. One night, awakened by alarming noises from the baby monitor, Philippe is struggling to breathe. Philippe experienced phantom pain, a sensation common among quadriplegics. Driss helped him through it with calm words, and even took him for a stroll by the river under the night sky, a first for Philippe at night in years, and now he's more relaxed. During this outing, they discuss how medication has its limits and how Philippe experiences phantom pain due to his condition. As they spot women walking by, Philippe reveals his inability to pleasure women due to his paralysis, but shares that ear massages provide some satisfaction because of their sensitivity. When phantom pain threatens again, Driss offers him one of his joints. Skeptical at first, Philippe ultimately enjoys it. Their evening continues at a restaurant where they share laughter over dinner as Philippe opens up about his past, meeting his wife during college only for her later struggles with miscarriages and terminal illness, leading them to adopt Elisa after she passed away following an accident during paragliding, a hobby that once brought him joy before tragedy struck. Bad weather caused him to crash and break his vertebrae, although he still thinks his real handicap isn't the chair, but living without his wife. After joking around so more, Philippe remembers the date and realizes Driss has passed his 1-month trial, so he's now officially hired. But he needs to start by bringing back the Fabergé egg he stole because it was a gift from his wife. She would give him one every year, and he has exactly 25, matching their time together. The next day, Driss goes to talk to Mina when she's leaving school, who is a bit offended because he hasn't been answering her messages, except to ask her to look for the egg. She also tells him about some cops that have been calling their home. Afterward, he visits Adama, who confesses he was found with 30 grams on him. Driss wants to take him to lunch, but Adama refuses and instead gets in the same suspicious car from before. Later on, Driss is allowed to be present while Philippe dictates his letter for Eleanor to Magali. He thinks this purple prose is very boring and that Philippe should be more direct. He's also baffled to hear that this has been going on for 6 months and they'd never exchanged pictures. When he finds her phone number on one of the letters, he takes it as a sign and calls her, obliging Philippe to take the phone and finally speak to her outside the written word. Their conversation goes so well, Philippe is now on the phone with her all the time, even right before he and Driss attend the opera, during which Driss laughs and makes fun of the costumes. The next day, Driss convinces Philippe to accept to exchange pictures with Eleanor and chooses one of him in the wheelchair. Afterward, while he's painting, Elisa bursts into his room to ask him for cigarettes and makes fun of him for trying to be artistic. Getting angry, he kicks her out before going to see Philippe, who is currently asking Yvonne to change the chosen picture for one of him when he wasn't quadriplegic. She hides the picture inside the escort file right before Driss burst in, complaining about Elisa and telling Philippe he needs to discipline her, something Yvonne agrees with. Philippe agrees to talk to her, but he's mostly surprised when Driss lets it slip that he's been painting. Days continue to pass, and the friendship between Philippe and Driss continues to grow. Driss takes Philippe to play in the snow and brings him along when he goes out for a run. Philippe gets him his first suit and scolds his daughter while Driss listens to him through the baby monitor. When Driss finishes his first painting, he shows it to Magali, who slaps him when he tries to kiss her. Philippe, however, likes the painting and promises he'll try to sell it. The two of them have a great time with each other, enjoying things like getting a faster car, sharing joints, and even hiring escorts together. When Philippe's birthday comes, he isn't very excited about it. Every year he pretends to be surprised that they're throwing a party and has to meet with all these relatives that only come to see him on the date to check if he's still alive. Philippe says it'll all be rather boring. While he and the guests enjoy some live classical music, Driss searches for Elisa, who is crying in her room after having taken some of Yvonne's pills, which won't kill her as she expected. She was sad because Bastien broke up with her and called her a tart, so she asks Driss to talk to the boy, which he accepts to do for a price. Meanwhile, Philippe is showing Driss painting to his relative and manages to convince him to buy it for 11,000 euros. Driss goes back to the dining room and chats with Ivan, who tells him Magali is in a relationship with someone named Fred, but things are rather rocky at the moment, giving Driss hope. As the party begins to die down, Philippe makes Driss listen to some of the most important songs in classical music history, but he could only joke in response. After the band is done, he brings his iPod and plays Boogie Wonderland by Earth, Wind and Fire before he starts dancing right in the middle of the floor. He's an incredible dancer, and he even convinces the rest of the party to join him and dance with him, which Philippe enjoys watching. Later, when putting Philippe to bed, Driss opens Eleanor's latest letter to him. She sent her picture, showing she's rather pretty, and is telling him they should meet next week when she visits Paris. When the day of the date comes, Yvonne and Driss put Philippe through dozens of outfits until they find the perfect one. And since it was Yvonne that would take Philippe to the date, Driss uses his day off to visit Bastien and threatens him until the boy accepts to apologize to Eliza and to bring her croissants every day. He also asks him to fix his hair. Afterward, he visits his mother at work, but only to watch her from afar. At the restaurant, Yvonne and Philippe are waiting for Eleanor, who is very late. After waiting for an hour, Philippe gives up, calls Driss to ask him to take him away, and then leaves the restaurant without noticing Eleanor is arriving at the same time. That same night, Philippe takes Driss with him in his private plane and gives him the money he got for selling the picture, making him immeasurably happy. They make it to the countryside the next morning, and Philippe decides to go paragliding, dragging Driss with him as well. Driss doesn't want anything to do with it, but after initially freaking out, he ends up enjoying the experience. When they return home, Adama is there waiting for Driss and gets scolded when he sees the scars on his face. Adama will still not tell Driss what's happening in his life, though, so Driss makes him wait in his room while he calls Mina to tell her not to worry and goes to put Philippe to bed. Philippe, however, isn't sleepy yet. After making Driss look at a painting with him, he asks him about his family, which Driss at first doesn't want to talk about, but eventually gives in. It turns out Adama technically isn't his brother, and his parents aren't actually his parents. They're his aunt and uncle. They fetched him from Senegal when he was 8 because they couldn't have kids, and his real name is Bakari Basari, but because other kids had that name, they called him Idris, and that became Driss. One day, his aunt miraculously was able to conceive, and after his uncle died, there were other men and more kids as well. In the same way Driss had talked to him about Elisa, Philippe points out that Adama needs discipline. So he fires Driss so he can be there with his family because he can't spend his whole life taking care of an old man. The next morning, after Bastien has brought his daily croissant while wearing a better hairdo, Driss packs his bags and gets ready to go. Magali comes to say her goodbyes, and when Driss tries to hit on her one last time, Magali introduces him to his significant other Fred, which is short for Frederick. Turns out Magali isn't interested in men, and Driss gives up on the spot. On his way out of the house, he gives the baby monitor back to Yvonne and teases her for having lied to him about Magali just to mess with him. In return, she gives him the escort file he had started, and he's disappointed to find the picture he had chosen is hidden there. Driss throws away the file, but he keeps the photo for himself. Once outside, he finds a car once again blocking the entrance, so he asks the driver to move away even if he doesn't work there anymore. When Adama calls him out for it, Driss says it's a matter of principle. A few hours later, the two brothers go pick up their mother at the station while back at the house. Philippe is having his first dinner together with his new caretaker, who is stuffy and boring, and Philippe decides to leave him without even having a bite. Since Yvonne is out on a date with the gardener, nobody is there to scold him for it. As days pass, Driss goes back to his old life. He hangs out with his old friends again and tells the guys from the suspicious car not to bother Adama anymore. When he goes to an interview he doesn't have enough experience for, he manages to win over the employer by calling himself pragmatic and using all the art knowledge he acquired while working for Philippe. This lands him a job as a driver. Philippe continues to dislike his new caretaker and is in a constant bad mood. One night, he refuses anyone in the house to help him with his phantom pain, so Yvonne calls Driss and asks him to come over. That's how they find themselves in the situation from the beginning, with the cops chasing after them first and escorting them to the hospital later. After that little adventure, Driss drives Philippe to the coast, and the sight of the sea helps Philippe calm down. Sometime later, Driss takes care of Philippe's overgrown beard before taking him to a restaurant for lunch, but he doesn't stay because someone else will be keeping Philippe company today. Driss wishes him luck and finally gives him back his egg before leaving. And Philippe starts worrying about being alone until he sees who his date is, Eleanor, who is delighted to see him and doesn't mind the chair at all. In real life, Felipe Pozzo di Borgo moved to Morocco, remarried, and had 2 daughters. Driss, whose real name is Abdel Yasmin Salou, started his own business and is also happily married with children. Despite their separate lives, the 2 men remain close friends to this day. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more recaps. See you in the next video.